Okay, so let us start. Man is here from Supreme. He'll be introducing you, Saurabh. Meanwhile,
Yep.
if you want, you can share your screen and we can begin.
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. For today's session, we have Mr. Saurabh Upadhyay with us. He's an advocate in Supreme Court of India. He's a corporate litigation lawyer and legal advisor and general counsel. He has been conducting litigation and advisory in the field of mercantile law, civil law, cyber law, intellectual property, banking law, employment law, corporate law, insolvency, and bankruptcy, international and local alternative dispute resolution for corporate groups. Today, he will enlighten us on the topic company valuation and dilution, what you should know to raise funds. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Man. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you all for being here. So, without wasting further time, let's start with what you want to know and what you should know regarding valuation and dilution. I'll be sharing my screen and we'll be following a small PPT presentation and we'll take it from there. Yeah. I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so to begin with company valuation and dilution, this is the topic which is the most sought after topic and also the most dreadful terms for any investor or for any company, any startup seeking investment. This is the first foundation step of a startup, which a startup takes just to get to the next level. So we'll be focusing mainly on seed funding and Series A funding. Series B is something which is much more broader in sense, and we'll take it up at some other time. So to start with, what are the factors which influence your valuation? We'll be starting with company valuation. So these are the terms which, as a startup owner, you must have heard a lot of times. Whenever you've got in touch with an investor, whenever you've got in touch with a chartered accountant or lawyer. So the terms are proof of concept or traction, team value, growth potential, distribution and marketing, pre-valuation investment and revenues, and industry. Now, I won't be going into detail because these are mainly the most commonly used terms, and this we use in our on a daily basis when we talk about startup and investments. Now, coming on to how do we value a company, mainly a startup. There are different methods utilized by various people. Some of the foremost methods are the Berkus method, the venture capital method, cost to duplicate method, discounted cash flow method, which is popularly known as DCF method, comparable method, and valuation by multipliers method, which is also known as earning before interest, tax, dividends, and amortization. Now we'll be talking briefly about all these methods. The first one is the Berkus method. The Berkus method was developed by Mr. Dave Berkus. He's a leading angel investor, and this method was developed somewhere around the earlier part of the 90s. In this method, what the investor looks at is are 4 or 5 major components which consist of a sound idea. Second thing, availability and readiness of the prototype. Then quality of the management team behind the idea, the strategic market relationships any idea has or any idea is carrying with itself, and sales or any pre-rollout revenue, sales and pre-rollout revenue. What this method actually does is it gives base points for everything which is available on the date when you reach to an investor. For example, for everything, you can raise 0.5 million of USD for the available things. For example, you have a sound idea, so you can add to your valuation 500k USD. Then you have a prototype ready. If you have it, you add another one. So overall, with these all 5 points, you can take the investment up to a 2 million USD mark if you do not have any sales revenue as on date. If you do have some sales, if you can show that yes, the company has gained some traction, the company is working on it, you add another 0.5 million to it. So the total ask under this method can go up to 2.5 million. The next method we come to is venture capital method. The most commonly used method and the most widely used term when we in terms of gaining a pre and a post money valuation for any startup. This works on three or four basic terms. First is ROI, which is return on investment. Next is the terminal harvest value, the terminal harvest date, post money valuation, and pre money valuation. What this method does is the elements which you bring onto the table, the elements like terminal value, which is the value of business on any given future date, which based on your projections shall be rating of the company, say 3 years, 5 years, 7 years from the date you raise the capital. And the post money valuation, the valuation which you'll gain after a period of time on the date, the valuation of the company on the date at which the terminal value is calculated. You use these components and you create a pre-money valuation. From this point where you take it, pre-money valuation is mostly post-money valuation minus the investment amount. So this decides your valuation. The first two methods that we have talked about are the methods which are used most commonly for seed startups. Now we come on to cost to duplicate method. As the name suggests, you have created something, you've created an entity, you've created a prototype, or you have an idea which is on ground, which is actually working on ground. Then you calculate the cost to duplicate method. This method is used for businesses in Series A or Series B funding, not for anything. I had something, sorry. So the cost to duplicate method is something which is used for Series A and Series B funding. This is not applicable to seed startups. Then discounted cash flow method is the most commonly used method where we are dealing with companies which have a track record of at least 3 to 5 years. This is again used by chartered accountants while dealing with sale transactions of the shares and everything. Then comparable method as the name suggests, you compare your business with another existing business and another existing deal which has just happened in the past. This is something like what you do with the real estate. To gain a actual number, to gain the actual market value of any product, you just take up another similar product, you see how it has been dealt with, and you apply it to your case with some plus and some minus. Then valuation by multipliers method, again EBITDA. This is again a method used for Series B funding. This is not applicable to Series A or C. What EBITDA means is earning before, pardon me?
I think there was somebody unmuted by mistake.
Yeah, it's okay, no problem.
Yeah.
So the valuation by multipliers method is again for Series B funding. Again, it's again for companies which have a constant stream of revenue working for them. EBITDA is earning before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization. So whatever you earn, that amount is then multiplied by a factor which is based on the understanding given to the investor and based on his own experiences. That is the valuation given to a company later on. Now we'll move forward. We'll see what are the different stages of startup. What are the various stages? What are the categories in which you can put a startup? What are the basics and what all methods are applicable to those startups? So first is seed funding. This is what we deal with the most because we have seen a boom in the past 10-15 years, especially in India, in people coming up with novel ideas and trying to create a business out of it. So seed funding is the stage where you're at the concept or idea stage. You don't have any prototype, you have no assets, no business, no revenue stream. So the methods applicable are Berkus and venture capital methods because both these methods do not rely on your revenue stream. They rely solely on your projection. In fact, Berkus does not even take projection into consideration. Berkus simply works on what you have at hand. Venture capital method, as I told earlier, is the most commonly used method for coming to a value of a startup, which is at the initial stage, maybe with some sales or some revenue stream, or even without any revenue stream. The next stage is stage A, which is your beta model, your prototype is ready. You're ready to roll out your service. You have everything in place. There are some sales which are happening. Your teams are in place, and now you're in need of funds to expand and actually roll out the whole business platform into the market. Now for this, pardon me, the first method applicable for stage A is cost to duplicate method. Because you have a prototype ready, you will be knowing what all investment has gone to it, what all factors will factor in for creating another model, another similar model, which can finally end up in doubling your revenue. Another method is the comparable method, in which you can compare a similar model, which has already gained some investment, and replicate in your own case. Next, again, is the venture capital method. Stage B is you have a proven business model, you have steady revenue generation, and you have an accessible track record. With accessible track record, what we mean to say is at least 3 to 5 years of data is available with you. When you have this, what you can follow is a valuation by multipliers, the EBI-DTA method, and the comparable method. So, most important aspect, what should be your expectation and aspiration when you reach out to an investor? Now, as I've written, startup is not a science. A great deal is based on projections. Especially for seed, there is no perfect way to value a business. That has nothing into it. Valuation is dependent on several factors, and like every negotiation, the investor would want to gain maximum output with minimum input and minimal risk. The, the entrepreneurs must assess the actual need. Never seek to raise more than what you actually need. That would be disastrous for you. As we go down to the dilution part, we'll cover this aspect. Depending on the requirement, the following can be seen. At the seed stage, what you can see is, from what you can seek from an investor, is 250,000 USD to 2 million USD, where 2 million is the top limit. Once you cross it, then you go on to the round A stage from 2 million to 15 million, and then round B from 15 to 50 million. Once you've crossed that stage, you're looking at something really big what you have created. And the next stage for any business is an IPO. Now, leaving company valuation there, we'll just move to dilution. Now, dilution in common sense is considered as a negative term by any existing owner. Now, in layman terms, dilution is the decrease in ownership, which is the result of issuance of fresh equity by the company. For example, when you start with 100% shareholding, every time you issue fresh stocks to raise capital, your shareholding, your ownership will go down. The key terms while dealing with dilution to understand are common stock, preference stock, earning per share, payment in kind and dividends, rate of conversion, and anti-dilution protection. We'll discuss them during our Q&A round. If you want any more details on this, I'm happily available to give them. Now, what should be your approach towards dilution? Now, dilution, as I've already told, it means reduction in ownership, and as such, it is considered as a bad notion. But however, this has to be discarded. Dilution need not be bad. You have to consider your ownership in terms of share value, not in terms of the percentage you hold. It's quite possible that a company worth 1 lakh, you're holding 100% shares, but for a company worth 10 crores, you might hold 1%. Your 1% will still be equal to what you were holding as a company with a net worth of 1 lakh rupees. So that is what needs to be kept in mind when we approach towards dilution. The most important thing when you deal with dilution is you have to concentrate on the value of your shares should never go down even after dilution. For this, you can use this Paul Graham equity equation, which is very helpful, which has been very helpful in all our deals. So the equation is very simple. The value of ownership after dilution, if you'll see the first line, should always be greater than by this formula, that is 1 by 1 minus n, where n is the number of ownership shares that you are giving up as a percentage. Now, if you'll come down to the example, you can understand how this equation works. For example, if you own 15% of a company valued at $1 million, your stake would be worth 500K. And if you get diluted by 20% while raising new shares and raising the investment and issuing new shares, the value of company and your stake in the company will go down by 20%. Say your 500 becomes 400K. So at present, your stake is 100K, 20% less than it actually was. Now, to keep the same value, what you need to do is you need to have ownership which is 40 times the actual value of the company as on date. So for example, to equal 2500K, the investment should be capped at 1.25 million. So the original value of the company rises from 1 million to 1.25 million, and your stake in the company continues to be at the same level of 500K, even though there is a percentage reduction of 20% in your shareholding. Okay, now conclusion. Valuation dilution are most sought after topics for startup founders, dependent on many factors which are correlated, some of which are independent. It can be a tricky exercise. It is imperative to have a clear sight on what you desire at the end of the road. When we say end of the road, what you desire at the time when company is liquidated, or when you exit from the company, or when the VC exits from the company. The end result will be dependent on the work of your chartered accountant while crunching numbers, and upon your lawyer while you're negotiating with the investor or a VC. So that is a small introduction to company valuation and dilution. And I think we are open to questions if we can continue with that.
Does anybody have any questions with respect to whatever was discussed? You can raise your hand or directly unmute and ask about valuation pertaining to your startup.
I hope you have understood some part of it. I was not too fast in there. I hope.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hi Shumam.
Yes, sir. Sir, actually, I have a question. So, actually, we are a early stage startup. So, obviously, we will be raising seed or pre-seed round.
Okay.
So, actually, it's like whenever we talk to investors, so it's like they need some kind of traction or something, some revenue, because nowadays, very few people invest on the basis of just an idea.
Yeah.
Suppose I have to value my startup or calculate a pre-money valuation of my startup. So how much of percentage is like, so right now we don't have any, quantifiable assets.
Yeah.
So how much of accounts for things like, similar industry or the team components? So actually what is the best way to calculate it?
It's the Berkus method. For you, it's the Berkus method because Berkus method does not rely on any kind of revenue in the pre-seeding stages. Berkus method solely relies on 5 factors, which are the quality of your idea, the prototype or your business model if it is ready to be rolled out, the quality of your management team plays a very important part, then the strategic relationship which you have in the market or which you propose to have in the market, and last but is the sales and pre-investment revenue, but that is not necessarily applicable to every case. So you can still look at raising up to 2 million USD based on those 4 factors.
And one more thing, just in one case. So I was speaking to a few people, and they told that relating suppose your startup to startups in the similar fields and checking how much they raise in the current scenario.
Yeah.
So how does that play? So what the role does?
That is called the comparable method, where you compare your business with another existing business which has just raised some fund. But that is only helpful to you if you have some revenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hope that answered your question. Does anybody else have any questions?
Hi, I have. Hello, am I audible?
Yeah. Yes, you are.
Yeah. So, like the Berkus method, like how does it, differentiate between the nature of the idea, like the domain you belong to, or it treats every idea as same?
No, definitely. The industry you belong to plays a very important part. For example, right now, if you will go to an industry which is somehow related to hotel industry or travel industry, your valuation will be on ground right now because of the circumstances we are facing. Whereas something inventive in field of waste disposal or sanitary services, your idea would be a hit right now. It depends from situation to situation, the timeline, the industry, all those factors come into place. When you say a sound idea, your sound idea needs to have two very important factors. First thing, it should be ready for rollout. Second thing, it should have a scalability in it. No investor wants to invest money for 2 years or 3 years and then get out with even value. What he wants is that his value increase in multiples. So something, scalability is very important with your idea. You have to keep in mind that the idea develops itself once you have the money invested into it.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Any questions about valuation? So I wanted to check with you, Saurabh, and I think this will be helpful for everyone, is that when a company is thinking of raising funds, what should be their first steps in terms of getting ready legally? Because all the founders right now, they have, generally at an early stage, they are small teams, generally with just, one or two co-founders. So what amongst themselves should be, their first steps to get ready to jump into fundraising?
Yes, from a legal aspect, legality comes into play later on. The first thing that you need to have is your deck, your investment deck. Whenever you approach, there will be too many questions from the investor on your idea, on the team, on the prototype, the rollability, the scalability. All these factors are need to be accounted for.
Yeah.
Legal thing comes into picture once you actually start getting into a deal. So you have to make sure you have a sound legal team which can draft an agreement and negotiate that agreement on your behalf with the investor.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So because see, no investor is here to help you and do a charity. Investor invests money for profit. That is the purpose behind any business, profit. So
Yeah.
investor is looking at it from a different angle. You might be passionate with your idea. That idea would be really brilliant, but the investor might not feel the same.
Right. Yeah. And do you think that there is any, particular? Please, are you saying something?
Yeah, I was just concluding. Legality comes into play when you start negotiating on the deal.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I wanted to check if you think there is a any particular instrument that works better when somebody is raising funds, whether it's common stock, preference shares, and what the founders should know about these when they go into this process.
Yeah, when you see, whenever you're raising, there will be definitely dilution. And while we deal with dilution, dilution is divided into two broader categories. One is narrow dilution and another is broad dilution. So narrow dilution is simple.
Yeah.
For seed and stage A, narrow dilution works very well. It is just in some capital which is being brought into the company, new shares being issued, and your shareholding goes down as a result of this new infusion.
Yeah.
When we talk of the broad dilution, in broad dilution, you take into terms all these preferences, payment in kind, ESOPs, and all those factors. They also impact your own shareholding. So while diluting as a stage A or stage B company, you have to be very careful of these anti-dilution measures which are employed by most of the investors. An investor will want to ensure that after some period of time, when his harvest time comes, he leaves with certain value. That could be 2x, 3x, 5x the amount he has invested in, and that could be done by way of preference. So in case of preference, every other person, the founders, the shareholders, the employees, they take a back seat. So we have to pay first to the investor, he exits. The safeguard for it is you have a clause which mandatorily says that preference shares in X amount will be converted into common stock once the company reaches a certain particular benchmark. So these are the safeguards which has to be kept in place. This is what I was referring to while negotiating. These are the things which have to be kept in mind.
Right. And do you think, you mentioned anti-dilution is a point that founders should look at. Do you think any other, commonly missed points that later end up being legal hassles for founders, some 2-3 points in a term sheet or the share subscription agreement that are very, very critical and founders should definitely, go through before signing? If you have any suggestions on those.
Yeah, as I said, you have to take in consideration the value of your shares. Even after dilution,
Yeah.
your value should remain at least same. If not, it is increasing. In most of the case, what we deal is, how we do it is we come to a value, we come to a investment value which increases your existing shareholding valuation in terms of the money, in terms of liquidation value.
Yeah.
Once you're negotiating a contract, yes, apart from taking into consideration the anti-dilution protection measures taken, you have to keep in mind that what dividends you will be paying, what payment in kind would be done, should be the rate of conversion when you have reached a certain point. And there are two aspects of it. One is once you've reached that state, and once you fail to reach that stage.
Yeah.
Both these factors are to be factored in when you're negotiating, when you're drafting an agreement.
Okay. Noted. And as a follow-up to what Shubham asked about the Berkus method for very early stage startups, so how do you think is the approach towards dealing with completely idea stage startups? On what basis, apart from the novelty of the idea, do you think any any part of the caliber of the team or any other qualitative aspects are taken into consideration when valuing a startup which is at an idea stage?
Yeah, so Berker's method is 5 points. Again,
Yeah.
it should be a sound idea, your prototype, your quality, the quality of your team, your relationships in the market, your strategy, and if any sales or pre-investment revenue is being collected. So when you say idea, it need not be a novel idea.
Okay.
It could be an idea with some people exist with some existing players, but the demand is such the idea will fulfill into a full-fledged business.
Okay.
So it need not be necessarily something very unique or something very out of the world. It could be something which is already being done. For example, you can just see the market and you can see those marketplace models.
Right.
For everything, we have a marketplace in play, whether it's travel, whether it's daily essentials, whether it's health, whether it's insurance. Marketplace model works. It is just you have to identify how you have to go out. Your marketing and your advertising strategies are to be in place for your idea to become hit. That is for B2B. And that is for B2C. Once you're dealing with B2B, your marketing connections, the fourth point, strategic relationship, that becomes important.
Okay.
Yes, whether you have the contacts, whether you've already initiated contact with your clients, any interest has been shown, which will convert into traction. All those aspects, they are taken into consideration during Berker's evaluation.
Okay. And how are these quantified? If we were to just give a very basic explainer, how would these in a very typical case be quantified?
All the 5 points are taken as an add-on in a range of 400 to 500,000 US dollars.
Okay.
As per the Berker's method, how it is being applied to, from 400 to 500. So for every tick mark that you have, a tick against sound idea, you can add 500K. For prototype, add another 500K. So like that, if you have some revenue, you can add up to 2.5 million. You can seek for raising 2.5 million. If you do not have a revenue, then 2 million is the top end for you.
Okay.
Yes. And one has to keep in mind while you're dealing with the Berker's method, keep in mind that the investor will always lowball whatever you're saying.
Right. Right.
Yes. It's like any other negotiation. It's like buying anything from a street shop, and while you negotiate while taking even subsidy.
Yeah.
It is like that. So negotiations work at every level.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So for a startup which is not making revenue and is, for example, at a prototype stage, so we add 400K for the sound idea and 400K for prototype, just as an example. I mean,
just as an example. Yes. So that takes the value, the value that you're adding to it at 800K.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the amount.
Yeah. Sorry, please continue.
Please continue. Yeah.
Okay. No, I meant that, does that mean that any idea with a very basic prototype, does that this method, according to this method, taken very objectively, any idea with a prototype should have that valuation? or are there any minimum requirements for a startup to at least be doing this valuation for their venture?
See, it cannot be just an idea.
Yeah.
If you go out and seek investment based on just an idea, you're not going to get anything. When you're dealing with an investor, you're dealing with a seasoned businessman. Someone who has already made money and wants to invest that money somewhere else to make more money. So your idea needs to have all these factors which are used in the Berkus method are complementary to each other.
Yeah.
They enhance the scalability, they enhance the profitability, the revenue generation aspects of any startup.
Right. So then you would say that for any early stage venture, this is the recommended method to go with.
Yes. If you do not have any sales record, if you have some sales record, you fall on to the venture capitalist method.
Okay.
And it is also advised, depending on your stage, never rely on one single method.
Okay.
Always try to gain maximum value, see which method applies to your case, your scenario, and which method provides the maximum value for your sales, your shares. Yeah.
Okay. So even if, for example, if someone has a prototype and they did a pilot and had very, very early sales in it, you would recommend the venture capital method?
I'll recommend the venture capital in that case. Because see, when you have a pilot or a prototype ready, some investment has already gone into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that in venture capital method, that gets factored in, though in Berkus it doesn't.
Okay.
Berkus method takes into consideration sales and pre-investment revenue, but does not take into consideration what you've already invested into it as a founder.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. So anyone, anyone from the participants, any follow-on questions? Shubham?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. Yes, I actually have two questions.
Yeah.
One is that when we are discussing the Berkus method, so actually I was just reading. So as you said that all the 5 risks, so suppose we are allotting 400 to 500K or something. How does an investor or how does a startup founder decide that we have reached that mark of 400K or 500K, say in the team aspect or say in the marketing aspect? So how does that can be decided?
See, that depends on your presentation. That is ultimately that rests on you, whether you're seeking to raise the enhanced 200 million or the 2 million thing, or your work will be done by 500K. So if you're on 500K, if your idea is at a very initial stage and to roll out the same, your need is say 100K or 200K, the investor would value it at that point. If you'll ask 500K, the investor will immediately say no, 300K from our side.
Okay.
Yeah. So ultimately it goes on to negotiation.
Okay.
So you will say 500 as a founder of a startup. I'll say 500, but as a venture capitalist, you will always lowball me. You will always say that no, your idea is worth 300K. We can take an example which is existing in the market. Again, we can compare it to an existing startup. Then the prototype, whatever expenses are there to roll out, it can be deduced from the existing scenarios. So all those things can be compared and he will lowball you. You have to keep that in mind.
So it's like how it all depends on how well we can present it or how hard.
How will you present it? How will you negotiate it?
Okay. And as the second question is like when we are talking about sales, say deciding whether to go for the other method, venture capital method. So how does traction differ from sales? So suppose we have 10,000 users, but they are users, they are not paid users. So
for example, you've developed an application. Say you have an app.
Yeah.
Okay. You have downloads, but you don't have sale.
Yeah.
So having download shows that there is an interest, there is a traction, there is a market for this particular application. But to convert that into sales, something extra needs to be brought in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So traction need not mean sales. Traction means an interest, a generated interest. By traction means that the market has the demand for it. You're ready to supply it, and it has a future growth potential. That is what traction actually means.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
As a follow-up to Shubham's question, Saurabh, I would like to take your viewpoint on, there are two cases. One case has a startup with say 10,000 users who are
Yeah.
just downloads, and the other has say 1,000 sales.
Yeah.
So from an investor's point of view, which one is more favorable?
Users.
Users in the sense the downloads.
10,000 users. Yes.
Okay.
10,000 is the number that the investor will be much more interested in rather in 1,000 sales. A negligible sale is negligible, but a significant amount of traction, interest is much more helpful in raising the funds.
Okay. Got it. So it's not that sales has more weightage even when it is less. It's all about the number.
If you have sales, then you're not into the seed category. If you have those that much sales which can impact your valuation, you're not in seed category. You fall into series A, series B, because you already have revenue. Your demand then will drastically reduce. As a seed, you're seeking investment to go to the market, to reach your potential customers. But as a series A or series B company, you've already done that. You've already reached that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Srinivas, do you have any question? You unmuted yourself.
Yes, sir.
Your audio isn't clear.
I'm unable to hear this.
Hello?
Yeah, Srinivas, your audio isn't very clear.
It's clear now?
No. If it's possible for you, can you please write it in the chat?
Yeah. Okay, I have something from Mohammad Zishan.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says, Zishan, you can mail me. I'll leave my email ID here. Right now, I can't see your basic idea there. So I can take a look at it, and thereafter I'll let you know what I think about it.
Sir, I have one more follow-up question.
Yeah.
So as when we are comparing say 1,000 user sales to a 10,000 user attraction,
Yeah.
so in B2C, the number of downloads and the number of active users, the retention also matters a lot.
Yes, absolutely. Retention matters.
So when we say 12K downloads or 12K registered users, but how much, and then we compare it, say 1,000 sales, 1,000 small, how small it may be, 1,000 sales. So,
yeah.
So if there's no traction or if there's no retentions, so how much the 12K users, registered users matter? So it's like how to weigh that retention versus registered users versus sales.
I actually don't understand what your question is. Pardon me.
Yes. Yeah. So the question is like, suppose we have 12K users.
Yeah.
So I go to investor, I say that 12K users have downloaded my app.
Yes.
So how important is the retention, and how, so there is any quantifiable percentage that this weekly active, daily active, 40%, 50%, is there something like that?
Yeah, they see, I've already told you this is not a science. This is all assumptions and presumptions when we are dealing with a seed company. Like you said, there is an app, there are 12,000 downloads. So when you say there are 12,000 active downloads or 12,000 users of the app, the investor will look into how this turns into profitability, because when we are dealing with online applications and everything, there are various methods of generating revenue. It might, your just simple sales is not the only method. Once you have users available on any platform, big data, then your advertising revenue, all those also factor in. So having that larger number of users rather than having actual sales becomes much more important in terms of online applications.
Okay.
Does anyone have any other question? So I wanted to check one more thing, Saurav. This is one thing that we've experienced many startups to be in, is a state where, it's a small company and most of the co-founders are working part-time elsewhere.
Yeah.
So they're working, full-time elsewhere, they're working because of financial constraints. And, their vision is that when they fundraise, then they will join the startup full-time. And as we discussed, part of the workers method is team. So do you think this plays negatively, in valuing the company?
It does, absolutely. Because the investor will take a look into how much what's your dedication towards your idea. You can't have a half-baked idea. You can't raise a child part-time. It's as simple as that. It needs attention, constant attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would you say from a if it's a 3-member team, do all of them have to be full time in an ideal scenario if if they are facing financial constraints, because it is a problem for many founders. This is something we've seen many people face.
See, it's more of a, I'd say, a on the philosophical side
Yeah.
rather than on the legal or technical side of it. But yeah, if it's better to be fully dedicated to your project.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
can't keep working. You can't keep working in one company,
Hmm.
generate profit for someone else, and at the same time create something half-heartedly or giving half your total labor to it. You
Yeah.
can't create something big out of it.
Agreed.
There are sacrifices to be made by everyone at every stage. So there, if you believe in your idea that yes, this idea will fulfill what I want, will help me run my household, will help me create something big, then I think the risk is worth taking. But if you're not sure that your idea will work, why even go to a investor and take that risk?
Right. Yeah. No, and as you said, if you're valuing as per the Berkus method and individually looking at the team as well, then it does downplay in against
Absolutely.
the startup.
Absolutely.
Right. So, any other questions anyone else from the audience has related to this, whatever's been discussed? If you would like to ask something pertaining to your venture. Okay. So, Saurabh, would you have any comments, as any tips that, actually, it's a very long and a very,
People do their research, people have written books on it, and
hmm,
research this is a, in fact, independently, valuation and dilution are two topics which can be researched, and a lot can be said about them.
yeah,
In any case, if anyone has a query, I've just left my email ID there in the chat box. You can take it from there, and you can shoot me a mail, and I'll let you know. Because see, for every startup, what matters is what the startup is, what industry it belongs to. With every factor,
hmm,
your way, your approach to a
hmm,
VC, to an investor changes. There are some subtle changes which are to be made. For I might be dealing separately with a distinct state of mind and applications for a tech-based company,
hmm, hmm.
and it could be something else for a company which is completely product-based.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, so the different approach to different industries there.
Yeah. Agreed. So I think from the founders end, what they can do is, be fully prepared and well researched about why they are valuing at whatever they have chosen the figure to be, and be prepared for any counter question.
That will be the first question of any investor. What's your value as on date?
Yeah.
Followed by what do you see what valuation do you see in next 5 years, and how much are you seeking to raise?
Yeah.
So these are the three questions of every founder must be ready with all the ifs and buts included into it.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm having little confusion here. Like
Tell me.
you're telling there is a tech-based and product-based companies, right? There might be companies like tech companies who provide service-based startups. For example, they might be taking classes
Yeah.
that is not related to either tech or product, right? Like regarding those things, which could be the
uh,
better?
See, when you say you're taking classes, those run on an online platform.
Hmm.
And the biggest thing is the number of downloads, the number of users you generate on that platform, which can translate into a secondary stream of revenue in terms of advertisements or or big data, all those things.
Hmm.
So again, you're dealing with that tech aspect.
Okay.
When I say product based, something that you're manufacturing and selling without any intervention or IT intervention into it. You might have IT intervention in your production process, but your sales process is independent of it. You're selling a product like on a traditional shop.
Hmm.
It's like that. Yeah.
Okay, I
Okay.
have a question.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So
before the launch, what do you think? How much approximately could we consider our startup to be valued if we have in our survey 5,000 positive feedbacks, interested users? So currently we have that number before launch. So how much approximately do you think we can consider the valuation right now?
See, that needs some work. If you have some numbers generated, if you have some revenue, you have some downloads, we need to work on those numbers. There are all these methods which have been discussed, they all have their formulas, their applications. So we apply those and then we deduce a number for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if your
Yeah.
company has been doing business for past 3 to 5 years, then the methods applicable will require your chartered accountant to be a part of your valuation process.
Yeah, yes. So before the launch, you can say that those feedbacks or the interested users, they don't mean much, right?
No, they do. Before the launch, the first primary
Okay.
requirement of Berkus method, the first factor it takes in is traction.
Yeah.
Before launch, this is what we are pre-seed or seed. So traction is one of the founding parts. So the overall revenue, the overall investment that you can seek to raise is will fall somewhere into the bracket of 2 million to 2.5 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Depending on the Berkus method. With some other method, with the VC method, it could be something else, but hopefully within that range only.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah.
Good evening. This side Tanay. I have one question that just assume that there is any product which is available in international market,
Yeah.
and a few products of a similar kind which is available in market as well. But that product is not up to mark. And if anybody is creating a 10x better product than the product which are available as of now, those companies which are earlier available, so that's why the market is not very good. Means when anyone hears such kind of a similar idea, so people will ask, investors or any other person will ask the question, this kind of thing is already available and there are a lot of ventures who are failed in similar kind of the, so how to tackle that kind of situation?
See, the key point is demand. If you can show to the investors the demand is still there and that remains unfulfilled, and your product can fill in that gap. So that's the basic idea for answering this. It all depends on demand. If there are multiple players in the market, then you have to stress on the demand. The demand is still not fulfilled, even after having too many products in the market.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions before we close? Okay, I think Saurav, that's it for today. I don't think we have any more questions. So thank you so much for joining us and giving us this refresher on the topic.
Yes. And in case anyone has any other questions, my email ID is there in the chat box. You can send a mail and I'll surely reply to that.
Yeah. So Saurav has dropped his email in the chat. Anyone can reach out. Srinivas, do you have a question? You're unmuting. So maybe Srinivas can connect offline with you, Saurabh. I'll share the contact.
No problem.
It could be some audio
No
issue.
issues.
So thanks again for joining. And
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks, Tanvi.
it's very, very useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time. Thank you.